Welcome to the Marshall Pruett podcast, your weekend sports cars. This is the grand finale. Graham Goodwin, Stephen Kilbey. We're shutting down the show after. No, we're not shutting down the show. This is just the final show of 2024. It has been a packed and crazy one nonetheless across everything you two cover on dailysportscar.com, that being Weckety Weck, the official name of the FI World Endurance Championship, the European Le Mans Series, Asian Le Mans Series, anything with a series at the end of it, seemingly y'all cover that. Over here on my side of the Atlantique, we have the good old IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and a whole bunch of fun that's gone on this year. So we are indeed going to look back at the highlights, lowlights, funny pieces, whatever it might be. That's what we're going to do to close the year. I do hear the police coming in the background, so I think we better speed this up before they take me away. But nonetheless, that's what we're going to do. The majority of this being driven by our dear listeners, everything assembled by our friend Daniel Summersgill. Looking to 2024, Graham Goodwin, man, we got a lot to cover. We also were just about to jump into 2025, and it occurs to me that when we do the show next year, we're going to have a legitimately married member of the team here in Stephen Kilbey. He's going to be all grown up. I mean, this crazy times ahead.
You're trying to say that I'm not? You're trying to say I'm not legitimately married? Trudy's going to be shocked.
Some of these things are just self-evident, my guy. But nonetheless, we should crack on with the show here in just a moment. Would also mention that this is a rare episode about to happen. I'm staring back in the office here. We have Rocky and Rosie, our two cats, in the background. Listening might be one way of putting it, kind of sneering like, would you shut up? We're trying to sleep. So it is an all-in family episode, but before we get rolling, let's take one moment to hear one last time before it changes up our thank you in sponsor role and everything that makes this show possible. Time to say a big thank you to our show partners on the Marshall Pruett podcast, starting with Pfaff Technologies, build-to-print composites manufacturing company. They're specializing in medium to large-scale automotive, motorsports, and military applications. Visit pfafftechnologies.com. It's Pfaff technologies.com to learn more about their services and how they can benefit your business. Next, it's the Justice Brothers, makers of premium additives, lubricants, and cleaners, and servicing the automotive and motorsports industries for more than 85 years, with victories in all of the biggest North American motor races, including the Indianapolis 500, the 24 Hours of Daytona. The Justice Brothers products are truly race-proven. Learn about their vast history and range of offerings at justicebrothers.com. If you're fond of awesome motor racing collectibles, including Pfaff Motorsports McLaren gear and goodies, pay a visit to torontomotorsports.com. And finally, we have a new online merchandise home for the podcast, thepruettstore.com, for all the show stickers, models, racing memorabilia I'm trying to sell and put towards our fund to buy a house is now live and rocking. Thepruettstore.com. Also, Graham, a big thanks to our new friends at FEL Motorsports. New initiative here that kicked off towards the end of 2024 on dailysportscar.com. That being learning about the SCCC. We'll hear from you about that here as well. Getting to know this wacky, crazy, fun group of Canadian sports car racers going racing using a lot of the rules, a lot of the machinery we see in IMSA and some of their development series as well. So lots of stuff going on here. I figure, why don't we do a little, what do you guys think, before we dive into a long list, about 1,500 words worth of thoughts and reflections on the year from our listeners. Stephen Kilbey, kick us off. Give us two items that stand out more than anything else from this 2024 year of sports car racing. Fun, great, bad, whatever. Give us two.
Marshall, when I look back at this year, clearly some of the big achievements for some of the teams stand out, but for me, it's the Ganassi Cadillac split and the fallout with that ended up with Jota taking the wet gig with two cars, with Shank coming back to Acura, with Andretti ended up with Cadillac in IMSA GTP. Just the amount of change we're going to see next year as a result of that one split. I think that we wrote that as the story of the year on Daily Sports Car and our awards that we've done at the end of the year, and you just couldn't pick anything else. On a year when Ferrari won Le Mans again, on a year when Porsche did so well with Penske around the world, that for me stood out. And it's all your fault, obviously, Marshall, because you wrote about it first, didn't you?
I think. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, whatever the blame is, fire it this way. I take it all. I accept it all. I do realize I am the source of so many things that are faulty.
I think the key thing with that story, Marshall, the reason why it was so huge, it's not just the impact it had in the WEC, but it was the kind of starting gun for quite an extraordinary reshuffling GTP stateside that I don't think we could have foreseen. This time last year, unthinkable that would be the case. But everything that's happened since then, up to and including, by the way, the story that again you broke with Wally Motors. Yeah, I know. Looking set to take over the reins of the factory Lamborghini effort. The sheer put it in a kind of tin and shake it around manner of what we're about to see at the Raw before the 24 hours in just a couple of weeks' time in Daytona. That the changes that have come have been absolutely enormous on that front. That Stephen's absolutely right. Story of the year. For me, the story of the year was a transformation in the FI World Endurance Championship, where we had remarkably in both classes 6 different winners in 6 races. We were legitimately looking at one point, could it be 7? Could it be 8? Remarkable variety in winners in the World Championship in both classes in the first year of LMGT3. And frankly, much better racing as a result. Topsy-turvy strategy as a result. In my day job with the WEC to call those races, what a pleasure to see that. And an absolutely amazing 24 Hours of Le Mans. 2023 in the centenary race and event was spectacular. You were there for that, MP. But if anything, as a race, better still this year, despite the long weather interruption to green flag racing overnight. Despite that, it was an absolutely amazing race. And for me, that was the highlight of the year.
What about something, anything else stand out here before I chuck in my 2?
So a lower light for me was the Nürburgring 24 Hours. So, I mean, we don't want to go into this too much, I don't think, on this show, because you could dedicate hours to it. But it's been such a mess, isn't it, going with racing on the Nordschleife this year. Genuinely feels the most under threat as it's ever felt, certainly in the time that I've been covering VLN races and the Nürburgring 24 Hours. And the fact that you had the rival championships fighting out to try and get calendar spots for races on the Nordschleife around the 24 hours between the NLS and the NES, which eventually collapsed, meant the grid wasn't as good as normal anyway going into the 24 this year, despite it being an IGTC event with SRO, and then there being just horrible weather during the race, fog like I've never seen it before, sitting in the press room where you couldn't see the paddock and you're overlooking the paddock in that press room, barely being able to see the pitch straight. The fog was so bad, and it just lingered for so long that the Marshall posts couldn't see each other well enough throughout the whole circuit to run the race. So you only ended up with, was it 7 hours and 20 minutes, something like that, of racing, and then a botched finale where you ended up with an appeals process afterwards with the team that actually finished like 5th or 6th or 7th on the road, believing they'd won the race because of the way that the end was managed by the race officials. So we didn't get a full result for weeks afterwards. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible year for that community that props up racing on that amazing circuit.
Oh.
And next year is going to be difficult as well. I think as we've written, it's one of 3 24-hour races that are being held back to back to back in Europe next year. And you just worry that there's going to be a very low total of cars, certainly at the top end, that are manufacturer backed. next year. And so much time, effort, and money goes into hosting those events, and trying to ensure that it's secure for years to come is going to be a real challenge for everybody involved in the circuit and the NLS organisation going forward.
Yeah, they're certainly refocusing on grassroots moving forward. For the first time in 2025, we'll see what they're calling NLS Light. That is a full 4-hour race, but it will not feature the cars at the top end of the grid. No SP9 GT3 cars, no Porsche Cup cars. So they're trying to appeal to their grassroots to boost the numbers back up, because, as Stephen's fully well aware, there is a number that's critical, and that number is?
About 125.
The 125 cars is their break-even point, and they're not meeting it often enough at the moment. So we love racing on the Nürburgring. The Nordschleife is so very special. Disastrous 2024, challenging 2025, and it adds, by the way, it segues beautifully with what I was going to add as my disappointment, which is the fact that we're coming into 2025 with that fixture glut, those 3 back-to-back 24-hour races with Le Mans, Nürburgring and Spa on consecutive weekends. All of them have got good reasons for that. You know, the finger is not pointing in one direction and one direction only, but the finger is very firmly pointing at everybody involved that we've not been able to find a solution to that, because that is going to be big trouble for a lot of organisations and individuals involved in past any 2 of those 3, and very many people involved in all 3, and we're amongst them. I can tell you right now, we're not going to all 3. We're just not. We can't sustain that financially. We can't sustain that
energy levels
and physically, and that's us not directly involved in the absolute physical effort of running cars. Bluntly, I just don't think it's safe. It's as simple as that. I don't think for very many people it's safe. And we should not forget, by the way, when we add in to everything that happened in the Nürburgring, the fact that we had an appalling accident in the pit lane with dramatic consequences for a number of people precious to that series, with the explosion of an air bottle causing life-changing injuries for a couple of people in that paddock. We need this to be a happier place and back to being the very special place that it always has been and should be for the future in 2025. Don't want to end it on
Jeez,
downer.
talk about dragging things down your Goodwin at the start of the show. Good Lord.
Talk about the amazingness at the Centenary Spa. That's got to be a big
because
that's a bit of that's a positive note to end your.
It is. I mean, you know, for me, the race wasn't that special, but the
special result for Aston Martin.
It was a very special result for Aston Martin,
and almost for Ferrari.
Yeah, poor Ferrari though, being losing out right at the end with a stalls Lamborghini in pit lane, preventing them from taking the win that they deserved. Let's be blunt. But the effort that went in from race organisers, the RACB, SRO, the clubs that surround that, the fans, to bring memorabilia, exhibitions, and most of all the cars that have given us a century of history in that great race, 77th running this year in 2024, but the centenary event for the Spa 24 Hours, and the number of very special cars, winning cars, the cars from the very start of that race, some of the quirky entries, you know, the Peugeot minivan that raced back in the late 90s at Spa 24. It was great to see that, great to see some of the old faces from the Spa 24 of years gone by, many of whom are still involved in the present day, but a pretty special weekend to be a part of.
Heritage weather conditions as well.
Absolutely.
During the night.
as always at the Spa 24 Hours. But let's be blunt here. We've had a ball covering sports car racing this year. We really have. We've not even mentioned the LMS, and that was very special. One of the races of the year for the season finale, which saw 2 class championships settled on the last lap of the last race, changing hands on the last lap of the last race. Amazing year of racing, but the to-do list for sports car racing has still got some heavily inked in bold to-do items to prepare for the future. The challenges are certainly there too, MP. What about you?
I've got 2.5. The first two involve same manufacturer. That would be, as some of my friends in the UK refer to them, Porker. Good old Porsche. This was the year of Porsche in my mind when we were talking about endurance sports car racing. Not only Porsche Penske Motorsport with their title in Weckety Weck and Hypercar, opening the year with a Rolex 24 Daytona win. Huge, huge outcome for them. Winning IMSA's WeatherTech Sports Car Championship GTP title as well. Kings of the top international endurance series. Kings of the top, frankly, one and only endurance sports car racing championship in the good old US of A, and taking the crown jewel here to start the year. All the wins, all the success that they had. Only thing they did not achieve was that Le Mans overall victory, obviously going to Ferrari 2 years in a row. But to think of all that Porsche Penske Motorsport achieved in 1 year, a dream scenario, in not overstating this in any way, having loved this sport forever and watched countless seasons, I can think of very few, gents, where the same manufacturer, represented by the same team, the same service provider, facilitator, you name it, was able to be crowned the top class of the two major series in which they compete on behalf of this German brand. Back in the day, again, not uncommon for a Holbert Racing to win the IMSA GTP championship with a Porsche 962 and a factory Porsche to do something similar. Again, years might be off a little bit, but could have been a 956, 962, etc., etc. But cannot think of a time where the factory team, both major championships, came out on top. So that to me is going to stand out forever for this year. Other thing related to Porsche, this is my favorite thing that happened in 2024, and that is we had a Jurassic champion in IMSA's professional GT class, GTD Pro, won by, for me at least, the still relatively upstart, newish AO Racing program. Not one that's been around for 5 years, 10 years and such, just a couple years old. I still remember getting the call. Let me take a sip of coffee before my voice breaks here. I remember getting the call from Gunnar Jeanette out of the blue. Love Gunnar. Always had a great relationship with him, but hadn't spoken with him in, 6 months, something like that. Maybe even longer. Call saying, hey, looking to put together a team. And he had a couple questions about personnel and story and, who might be available, etc. And that's what we did. And put together a little story about them creating a team. PJ Hyatt coming in, deciding to go racing. Here they are in such, 2-3 years? Champions in the factory GT category as a privateer. Works definitely affiliated, but a privateer. This is not the Corvette racing with friends at Pratt & Miller rolling out of their monstrous, good Lord, how many championships have they won, factory. This isn't Multimatic running the new Ford Mustang program. Run down the list of all the well-known brands, manufacturers, and whatnot in GTD Pro. This is Rexy, Porsche 911 GT3R, and this team that underwent a driver change mid-season-ish. Seb Prio and Lauren Heinrich obviously getting off to an amazing start. Change there with Seb getting pulled back and whatnot. But Rexy, AO Racing, topping all the bigger factory programs in GTD Pro. I thought that was phenomenal. So I'm going to remember that for sure. I'm going to chuck in before you continue. Let's not forget as well that AO with TF Sport took the European Le Mans Series as well this year.
Now it's an interesting program. It was branded for PJ to have his guaranteed WC race, and he'll be with us in the European Le Mans Series for 2025. But that is a team with representation and championship wins on both sides of the Atlantic in exactly the same way that Penske managed.
Rightly so. My last item, which is kind of a half, not 3, but 2.5, is one that's been announced, has yet to happen, but I'm looking forward to this more than almost anything next year. It's my guy, Robbie Wickens, getting into WeatherTech Sports Car Championship here, kicking off at Daytona, part of the really, really cool David Askew owned team there. Seeing what's happening for Robbie, knowing that he is coming in, finally champion in its second tier category, the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, TCR Hyundai, that being with Brian Herta Autosport, knowing that he is getting a chance to step up to the biggest league that IMSA has to offer with the DXDT Corvette team. So happy for him. This is a guy who has bristled, raged internally about wanting to get back to the top, be it IndyCar, where he came from and was hurt, IMSA, wanting to get up to the very top. This is something that has just stewed inside of him for many years. And so knowing that that is going to happen for him, there's maybe a deeper story to tell about this being in the works for almost the entirety of 2024 and then crashing and falling apart completely. Done. Not even happening, not a glimmer, and then it coming back to happening. This is pretty amazing stuff. So looking forward to that news coming out here in 2024. I guess that still qualifies as something pertaining to the year. But why don't we get in, gents, to the great items submitted by our many listeners. And thanks once again to y'all, everybody who takes time to send in things. We do our best to get to as many as possible. We'll do that again here to close the year, looking back, the week in sports cars. Listener submitted, highlights, lowlights, whatever lights, broken lights. We're going to get to as many as we can, starting with our friend Jerry Sudduth, who helps me each week on the Weekend IndyCar podcast. Jerry, a massive lover of sports cars. Turner folks, he is a person who has dined within their garage, eating pre-race tacos and talking to Bill Auberlin last year at Indianapolis. I think that's about the best thing a Turner Motorsport fan can do. Jerry says, for me, the memory of the year, Graham, was IMSA in the wet at Indianapolis. Seeing the cars and drivers tackle a familiar course in the rain helped me see it from a new and exciting perspective. And I got to tell you,
interesting. That is an interesting one.
Of all the things that I love that we rarely get, at least over here, I realize y'all come from a land where the skies don't like you and rain on you constantly, trying to give you a message. Go away. We don't get a ton of rain races here in the good old US of A in IMSA. But when we do, it is spectacular to watch the cars, watch the drivers in particular, and getting to see them, both the mechanical side and the human side, how they perform with unsure footing. And so I love Jerry calling that out for sure. One of my highlights as well. Graham, we have so many other questions. Where should we go next?
Well, one here I reckon is worth asking Stephen. It's Adam Joseph talks about WEC LMGT3, the final season of GTE, and he asks, do we think the factory teams are missed? Is something missing due to the absence of full factory teams in GT racing in the WEC? Or, as he feels, is this the way to ensure a GT grid with works teams funded with additional non-factory funds?
I can't say I've missed it. Would it be nice to have like a pro LMGT3 class with factories in addition to what we've got in Hypercar, for instance? Yes, it would be fantastic. Of course it would. But I don't think I spent any time during this wet campaign thinking, I wish GTE Pro was back, because the factory battles in hypercar are just so amazing. And I can't see a scenario where we'd have a hypercar class like we've got now and a full-on factory GT class like we used to have combined. I don't think we're quite there yet. What I would say is, I think there is potentially down the line going to be space for LMGT3 to have to be split into Pro and Pro-Am. It's becoming really hard to get bronze drivers, especially at that level with the funding required. And I feel like there might be the opportunity to have a similar scenario to GTD Pro and GTD, where you've got a kind of mixed class with full pro lineups split in one, with maybe some private teams running pro drivers and aspirant silvers as the minimum. I think that would be great. But no, I wouldn't say I've missed the factory GTE teams. Certainly not as much as I'd have thought if you'd have asked me a few years ago. Yeah. What about you, Graham? Did you miss it calling the races?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we've had certainly this year is it's not just been the battle for the lead. It's been battling duos and triples and packs of hypercars up and down a field that's been pretty close to 20 cars. That's been transformational for the World Endurance Championship. LMGT3 has been a slow burner, but coming to the end of the year, as teams got their heads around the formula, which was a lot more different than I think people expected, and coming to terms with some new machinery for them, then we're seeing signs that could light up as well. As for the future, I think 2025 is going to be a testing year. It can be interesting to see how they cope with pulling together those budgets, and that might focus thinking on what the shape will be for 2026 and further down the line. But yeah, I mean,
I actually felt like I missed LMP2 at times more than I've missed GTE and Pro GT, because there were times where there are a few races during the season where there was maybe an hour here or 2 hours there in some of the rank and file WEC races, and particularly Qatar at the start of the season, where not too much was going on, and you kind of thought, we're kind of missing that real door-to-door LMP2 action that we used to get, which used to essentially prop up some of the races when we had a tiny hypercar LMP1 grid.
Well, actually, it's neat and tidy kind of segue here for one which I think is going to be coming your way, MP, and that's Mark Morgan. Mark points out, we talked about kind of new talents emerging. Connor Zilic, there's a young talent, spun LMP2 era entry, but ultimately won the Sebring 12 Hours. Mark says he watched him save it with his own eyes. What a talent, Connor Zilic.
Yeah, that kid, he has used IMSA's ladder organization, that functional start here, move there, you name it, get yourself from the entry of professional sports car racing up to the top of sports car racing and all the way to NASCAR. This kid has absolutely broken out. MX-5 Cup, Mazda MX-5 Cup, right? This is where the kid made his first impression, still racing in it this past season, also an LMP2, breakout star there, and into NASCAR as well. Trackhouse being the place that is leveling the kid up. Great to see for him. And also would say, coming back to your point of LMP2 being dropped from WEC, the focus on Pro-Am GT racing, trying to drive manufacturers up to the top class of hypercar. I don't know if I love all of those moves. And even here, with a young ace like Connor in LMP2 spinning, one of the things that we know for sure has been a great benefit to the quality of racing. Quality includes adversity and overcoming. More Pro-Am entries, more opportunities for that. So whether it's a pro like Connor spinning or some of those bronzy-esque drivers as well, you have LMP2 in the field. You do know wherever that happens to be, there's a chance of some imperfect driving and that benefiting the race itself, whether it's a caution, whether it's a clash and a cut down tire on whomever. Realize that there's some folks who want racing to be perfect and clean from start to finish. I don't want mayhem, but mistakes happen. And with more Pro-Am cars, you get better odds of mistakes happening, shaping a race and creating more fun instead of hours and hours of things droning on and nothing really standing out. So I get why Weckety Weck went the direction that it did, and don't know if time will say that it was indeed the best choice, but here we are. Ken Anderson throws in a very kind, by the way, thanks for your motorsports passion. Us knuckleheads sure appreciate it. And a happy new year as well. Why don't we go with our guy, Daniel Ingleton. Says, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to y'all. Just want to say a massive thanks to you, Graham, who gave up some of your precious time at the Imola WEC round in April to show myself and my dad around the paddock in a garage tour of the VistaJet Ferrari GT3 team. There were some unbelievable memories and access as a result that he says could never have dreamed of, and hope to catch up with all of us here in the show next year. It's one of the things we love doing, right? And I know we wish we could do more of it, but if you are indeed listener of the show, you're attending races we'll be at, never hesitate to reach out, send whatever communication, and if you're in the paddock or wherever it is, we'll do our best to bring you inside somewhere and show you something. So I know you love doing that as much as I do. Steven, I don't know why you hate it. I don't know why you walk around and just push fans out of garages, but we're going to try and get you up to speed.
It's his uncontrollable ego. It is out of control. I mean, I have to tell you, it's one of the things I absolutely love to do. And by the way, we got a couple of ideas out there with a couple of people we hope they're going to be working alongside all of us this year. Keep your ears open on the Weekend Sports Cars for some potentially really interesting opportunities later this year on exactly that front. For all of you that have interacted, by the way, with us, whether or not it's through Daniel, and our thanks again to Daniel for continuing to feed the good stuff to us. Anybody that's contributed comment and questions through the year, anybody that has stopped us, in the paddock, anybody that's taken part in one of those opportunities or the garage tours we did a fantastic one with our friends from United Autosports and from Jota Kota, myself and Martin Haven took a group of piece there, principally drawn from the listenership of the Weekend Sports Cars and a couple of the other online groups that follow. It is part of the joy that we are allowed to do that, and not only allowed to do that, but encouraged to do that. The more we do it, and the more you say thank you and amplify those efforts in a positive way, frankly, boys and girls, the more that the powers that be at the racing that we cover are going to embrace that and see that for the positive force in the sport that it absolutely is.
Where should we go next?
Let's have a quick look at where we got Mark Eakins.
Yeah, you guys kind of covered that off a bit in the preamble there about
we sort of did.
Yeah,
the stuff around stewarding and decision making. Never underestimate how tough this is. For every person that loves, a little bit of a spanner thrown in the works of a race, whether or not that is something like that happened at the Spa WC race, where the decision was made to run the final hour and 40 minutes that was lost to a red flag.
I actually thought that was a great decision, to be honest. Yeah. I remember it for a positive reason rather than...
Absolutely. But then again, quite correctly, Ferrari would feel that they were robbed for that. We do like to throw in a couple of bits and pieces into the Weekend Sports Cars as a kind of little Easter egg for our listeners. I have a source that told me why that was done in exactly that way, why it was that there wasn't an additional kind of lap added under the safety car.
Or a tumble.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was to do with, I am told, the contract they have with the local police on traffic management. And had they gone a single lap or minute later than they did, in other words, we went back to green to save that green flag running, it would have meant that the local police would have had to have left earlier than otherwise would have been optimal, to allow the traffic to leave and be guided out of what at the moment through Spa has been something of a minefield with lots and lots and lots of local roadworks going on. So it may well be that the specifics of why that was managed in the way that it was and how that was managed exactly the way it was to do with whether or not, I guess the uniformed version of Hercule Poirot had to get off and have his dinner, his frites and mayo on a Sunday evening.
Well, some people are accused of so long getting into the track that day that some people only just got to the circuit when
the red flag came out. So I feel the pain, but it is a tough one. It's a really tough one. Winners and losers, literally and figuratively, whichever way you go with that. Anything that's caught your eyes next, MP?
Yeah, the fact that we just had our first ever reference 7 years or however many years into the show of Hercule Poirot. I mean, sorry, as we all cough. It's a phlegmy.
Absolutely.
It's a phlegmy episode. Apologies,
y'all.
Stu Hodges says favorite memory was definitely getting to the WEC Imola round. The circuit is utterly brilliant. Hypercars are a real treat. Last couple hours trackside were incredible. And the changing conditions, and Toyota and Porsche put on a clinic and close. Hard racing. The closing stages, it was a pleasure to meet Ant Davidson. First time that statement's ever been made.
Never said that.
Just a deplorable human being.
Challenging personality.
Yes. Pleasure to meet Ant, one of our favorite people. On the way back to the UK and get such a great insight into how the WEC Imola race went. Big mention for this year's Le Mans 24-hour. Proper edge-of-the-seat stuff for the duration. And personally, compared to impersonally, all the time spent trackside at British GT with great racing, great people, and some properly rubbish British weather. I love that. Yeah. Also mention, I forget whether it's Mav TV here or Speed Sport 1. Not sure if y'all have a lot of, at least what's referred to here as FAST, F-A-S-T TV channels, but it's not TV. They're just streaming channels found for me through Amazon Prime. But on one of those two, which are automotive or racing centric, the most recent British GT season has just started airing here over the holidays.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
oh, wow.
I caught 12 seconds of one race before falling asleep a few nights ago. So, let's see, where else? Graham, why don't you take Thomas Schmidt's submission here?
Thomas Schmidt's.
Right after Stu's, which I just read, unless you deleted it because you're mean.
All right, it's always a delight, he says, to bump into Graham in the media centre.
Really?
I do too. I feed him an elbow as hard as I can, try and drop him whenever I see him, Thomas. So it is a delight because I'm like, okay, bull in a china shop, put him on his ass.
Oh, dear me. But Thomas says he covered 17 events this year, went for his first time to Zandvoort, worked as a photographer during the Belgian Grand Prix, enjoyed his racing and friendship from co-competitors. What more do you want? It is a bit like that right now. I think everybody is feeling it, that whilst it is hard work working in motorsport, and I can hear the tears around the world as I say those words, but I think everybody, MP, is recognising the upsides here, the opportunities here for the whole sport to break through into new marketplaces, make new friends. We're seeing it and hearing it every week on the Weekend Sports Cars with people saying first time question asker here, audiences for everything we're doing, all the stuff you're doing online for Racer, for IMSA, everything we're doing for DSC and Racer, everything I'm doing for the world of ACO racing in terms of the numbers of people tuning in to the stream platforms and the broadcast platforms that we use. It's absolutely on and up, and it is going to get better. The quick thing I'll say here to finish this particular part is we're just writing a bit of a wrap-up and a look forward to 2025 for Delhi Sports Car. There are some big stories still to come.
I'm going to throw in a mini rant here, which tends to be the exclusive domain of Graham Goodwin, Esquire, on the show. On the topic, piggybacking off of Thomas's submission here. Loving the year, running around, covering all kinds of races, doing this, doing that, the camaraderie, friendships, everything that he has experienced and is experiencing inside the sport. Can I please make a fairly random end-of-year, mid-show plea to those others who cover motor racing, sports cars, open wheel, whatever, who believe that their social media channels, Instagram's a popular place, X is still one, Facebook for sure, to piss and moan about any and everything, whenever possible, how hard it is, how grueling it is, how tiring it is. We are in the making people's lives better and happier business. Realize we have clients. What we do, what we create, goes out through those clients. Too many folks I come across believe that their social media channels are there to complain about whatever it is on a regular basis and or play themselves up or the sport up as, oh my gosh, it is so hard. The work I have to do. Second only to a prison sentence, you would think. And I see these things, and there are folks who fall into this, and it's sadly, at least as I interpret it, just traps to try and get praise or support. There's some real broken stuff inside folks who continually tap into that. It is exhausting. Can't deny. Absolutely chose the wrong sport. If you're out photographing endurance sports car racing and you don't like being tired, you're one of the dumbest people in the world to have chosen a job as a photographer, videographer, reporter, whatever it might be, where the central premise of what you do has things written on it. The 6 hours of this, 12 hours of that, 24 hours of this. To then go on your social media channels, having chosen this life, this exclusive thing that I gotta believe 90+% of the folks reading, looking at the photos, enjoying the videos, dream of being in your position. To have the balls on a regular basis to jump on your IG and complain, criticize, looking for little pats on the back from folks. Oh, wow, thank you so much for being able to bring through that content for me, having to go through such brutal gunfire and mortar fire. And good Lord, we're playing race car, folks. We're having fun. Exhausting fun, but fun nonetheless. Do you really think fans want to read, listen to, watch, whatever it is? You're constant moaning about things. Choose a different form of work if this is too much for you. But using your communication tools to the world to constantly play up like what we do here is anything remotely like a real job? My hands are relatively smooth. There are no cuts or divots in them as there once happened to be when I did much harder work. I can tell you, having been fortunate to do all the things that I mentioned, from writing to shooting to whatever, this ain't work. Please understand the folks receiving your content want to revel in the joy and the fun of it, not you positioning yourself as some kind of martyr. All right, that's my end of year rant. I don't do many of those on the show here, by the way, but yeah, just I kind of reached my breaking point towards the end of the year of like, I know you, I know what you do, I appreciate the stuff that you make. Stop playing it off like you're moments away from death, but you were able to survive and get across the finish line to take frickin' photos. Get a grip. Sorry, rant over.
But they're always the people, aren't they, Marshall, that start posts with, I think I speak for everybody in the media centre when I say X.
Well,
But they don't.
Oh, hang on a minute. Right, so Stephen, you've worked alongside me for how many years now?
15, 16.
And there's occasions when we have a bad day.
You are an
If
idiot,
you're having a
Kilby.
bad day-
I didn't realize it was that
Hang
long.
on. If you're having a bad day, I think I'm right that I say the same thing every single time. What is that thing?
Put the kettle on.
No, you know what it's going to be. What is it?
You could be working down a coal mine.
That's exactly it.
And I'm not
That's
saying
exactly it.
folks having a bad day, sharing that, again, that's normal. But it becomes your pattern. And it becomes a regular part of your communication. Again, the difference between
And you
saying,
believe other people care.
got a flat tire and my camera broke, my laptop exploded. Again, those are the normal things we share. But when just constant playing up of what you do as if you were a first responder, right? What I do is I think of the volunteer corner workers who spend Lord knows how many hours out in dreary conditions quite often, or the folks there, the EMTs, firemen, firewomen, whatever, where you go, okay, yeah, these folks know actual hard work and real adversity to come through. But hey, you wrote a little story. It's so cute, but good. We're going to say a prayer. You can survive and write another one. Come on. Anyways. All right, let's move on.
I'm going to grab the next one, and it comes from a friend of ours, actually, as part of our travelling band, and there's not many of us, that go to the European Le Mans Series races.
What?
He's a Danish reporter. I know, a Danish reporter. Someday,
Do they have reporters in Denmark?
Denmark will break through in endurance racing. And until such time as they find a talent in Denmark, tiny country, till such time as they do.
It's just the car park of a country, isn't
Absolutely.
it? The car park for Iceland.
Yeah. Jens.
You two are being mean to our guy. Come on.
But yeah, Jens comes up with a few kind of thoughts. And please, either of you, dive in with these. Highlights. He says, same as I did, 6 different winners, hypercar and LMGT3 and 8 races. Low lights, he says, driving standards at IMSA with a lack of penalties. Come back to you on that one, MP, if I might. Overtakes of the year, Julian Andlau at Spa during WC.
Yep.
Absolutely right. Mess of the year, Earl Bamber at Spa WC crash and Cooper Durrani for the Sebring IMSA crash, where he nearly ended up in the spectator area. Any thoughts on the IMSA comment there, MP? Driving standards and Jens and others, by the way, in this list of points made, talking about there being a bit of a disparity between on-track behaviour and action from race control.
Definitely thinking back to the season as a whole, wasn't an issue everywhere by any means, but there were a number of events where it seemed like the referees swallowed the proverbial whistle. And I don't mind a somewhat lax approach to race control. Said that for years. I don't watch motor racing to watch the adherence of rules and for it to be something where it feels like we are just working through a rule book to look for things to penalize folks for. There's also that tip over point where it's like, okay, hello, anybody in here? And would certainly hope that maybe a better balance of letting the lesser bits go, but maybe enforcing a few more of the items that it seems collectively are worthy of control, be it penalties, warnings, otherwise. You just want to come away from a motor race, whatever it is that you happen to watch, feeling like there was a pretty high level of standards in all areas. And I'll just say that that is certainly something that I have on my hope and wish list for this coming year. The mess of the year, I love that as well, mentioning Earl Bamber and Pippo Durrani. And so what do we have? Well, we have Earl taking over for Pippo this coming season in IMSA with the Wheelin' Action Express team, their Cadillacs. So, yeah, hoping for less severe show-stopping kerblamos.
the whole range of things offered up by Jensen. What I particularly wanted to pull out, it talks to what you were saying about the Porsche Penske Motorsport team, but also another event that you are intrinsically linked with. And he says Jonathan Duguid for the WEC title and the Indy 500 double in the same year.
How crazy is that? So Jonathan, longtime IndyCar race engineer for Team Penske, working with Helio Castroneves and others, is promoted to, I don't remember his official title, but just call it boss of the Porsche Penske Motorsport Initiative from the team side, right? We know obviously there's Thomas Laudenbach, some other good folks on the Porsche / manufacturer side, but the actual Porsche Penske Motorsport team that is overseen by our guy Jonathan Duguid, winning Rolex 24, winning, as we mentioned, GTP title, hypercar title, overseeing all of that, and thanks to our friends at Team Penske and their IndyCar push to pass cheating scandal, which led Roger Penske to suspend Team Penske president Tim Cindric, race engineer for Joseph Newgarden's car, assistant race engineer, also the managing director of the team. They had to draft in some folks for the month of May at the Indy 500, and with no immediate endurance sports car racing to oversee, good old Jonathan Duguid was brought in to be race engineer for Joseph Newgarden, who done won the Indianapolis 500. So, yeah, great mention here by Jens and Jonathan Duguid. Yeah, you have a year like that, and you realize it's never going to happen again like that. Like, just the odds of that ever happening again. If there's one thing I'm thankful that didn't happen, is it didn't happen for Jonathan when he was like 22, because that would suck. Because you would know you had peaked, and pretty much every year remaining in your career is going to be a disappointment by comparison. Jonathan, a little bit older, not an old guy by any means, but a little bit older. Just great to see him have this personal achievement. Unlike anything we can really expect.
Got a lot of time for him. Lovely guy.
Absolutely. I'm going to mention one more here before we start to think about wrapping up. It's just coming up on the hour. Comes from Jamie Creasy at Rice Car Driver. Watching Ryan Eversley win in SRO in Indianapolis this year was easily my highlight. Hashtag the People's Champ. I wanted to mention that, MP, because I have a very inclusive attitude to what it is we do, both in reporting and in terms of the way that we talk to our audience through this medium, through the podcast medium. And I just wanted to flag up, much as I love doing what we do on the Weekend Sports Cars and what you do with the Weekend Indy Cars, massive kudos to the efforts of Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman for what they continue to bring to the web free of charge with Dinner with Racers, and some exceptional work in the latest tranche of material they've brought through, particularly the dinners, plural, with the Rileys and the dinners, plural, with Ben Keating. Exceptional stuff that you can see free on YouTube, and I urge you all to watch those exceptional characters. Ben being as open and as open as those of us that know him as well as we do know he can be, not just about his journey into racing, but the journey that brought him there. And that is a head-turning series of interactions with Ben. And as for the Dinner with the Rileys, we've lost some good friends this year in motorsport, some very good friends this year. And Bob Riley, what can you say? An absolute icon of the sports. And to have it presented in such a way with his family and friends around him, that's something truly very special. And I hope we see a lot more in our part of the sport of the efforts of Ryan and Sean, because I think they do add something very special indeed to the ecosystem of reportage on motorsport as a whole, but sports car racing in particular. Both you and I have had our moments with them, with Dinner with Racers. You were amongst the first tranche. I was somewhat later to the feeding pool on this one. But take a look at that, as well as the great stuff that I know you produce around not just the Week in Sports Cars, Week in Indy Cars, but other stuff with, I know, some specials to come, MP.
I am staring at a to-do list that has the words Aston Martin on it. Yeah, it is cool to see Ryan and Sean finally starting to get a hang of this. I feel like if, a few more years they're going to get there. Kidding aside, yeah, just so happy for them to see that after all these years, 1 year longer than us for sure, they're continuing to not just put out exceptional content, but they're pushing as hard as ever to do great content. So love to see that energy from them, the support from their long-standing partners and Continental Tire in particular. Just love to see that. And while we give each other a hard time for fun, whether it's outreaches or back and forth between myself and Sean, Ryan sent a kind text on Christmas and fired one right back at him, and lots of love for them as well, knowing that this show, this podcast, exists because of them, because of Sean in particular. Again, old friend, but after wanting to start my own podcast for a long time and having been a guest on the first season of Dinner with Racers and sitting there at the table at the Smoking Pig restaurant and seeing a lot of the equipment on the table that he set up being things that I had bought or were versions of things that I had bought a few years prior and did nothing with, it really did inspire me to say, you know what? I need to pull my thumb out and make this happen. And so Sean and one of his good friends and producers were kind enough to get on the phone in December of 2015 and recommended Podbean as one of, I think, 2 possible hosting solutions. Went with Podbean. Suggested doing this instead of that and doing that instead of this, and really helped me to learn the things I didn't know that were really foundational in helping to create this dumb little Marshall Pruett podcast, now more than 1,500 episodes. And while I did slow down pretty heavily here in 2024 due to high workload and demands elsewhere, definitely intend to bring the volume back up. Not maybe as much as it once was, but just more than just a weekly sports car and weekly IndyCar show when possible. But all this stuff, honestly, was something that seeing Sean do it, sitting there with them, realizing like, okay, come on, man, make it happen. And then Sean being instrumental in guiding me towards the things that I should do or shouldn't do to get the show launched. On top of the great content that they continue to create, never forget and never lose appreciation for the fact that we're here doing this today with some great insights and urging from them. So there you go. Why don't we pick a few more and then farewell this episode, gents?
Let's do that. It's for the most part, we asked them for memories, and that's what they produced. And we've got a number of them here. Villeneuve Sports Cars watching WC into Lagos the first time, meeting Porsche Penske Proton Hypercar and BMW WRT Hypercar drivers. Corey Johnson, he's not giving up on IndyCar, but really loving him for the last couple of years. He says really enjoys how accessible and approachable the paddock is, and it is. It's very special, that paddock, allowing you to get really close to the cars, the drivers, grid walks, etc. Bjorn, so many great memories. Pick one, seeing the cars on the Daytona High Banks the first time. Goosebumps, I agree. He says, thank you to you, Marshall, to me and to Stephen, for another great year of sports car racing. Onwards to next year. We have plans, and they're good. And then we've got Lucas Lagasse, his highlight. Unsurprisingly, Ferrari winning Le Mans again. Second favourite, he says, was the fight at the end of the Daytona 24. It was also amazing, except for the flag being thrown a lap early. Don't forget that one. AJH 1990, seeing Super GT at Motegi and the 787B Le Mans winner at the Mazda Museum. And Aidan Young, the last comment we've got here, seeing Le Mans in person for the first time. Boy, did you pick a good one. That Ferrari win.
You've peaked, mate.
Yeah, that Ferrari win was iconic. So many memories, MP. So much great sport this season. So much more to come.
Well, yeah. I also think I'm still sick because I read Aiden's and my eyes said, seeing Le Mans in prison for the first time instead of in person. And my first question was going to be, that's amazing, but I don't think they allow mobile phones in prison, so hopefully you're not having to hide this in creative places, Aiden, to send us submissions. So, yeah, oh boy, I got problems,
they're both, in fairness, they're both places that they'll actually do bolt this furniture to the floor.
No. Oh, absolutely no.
Not gonna lie, sometimes I've thought, do you know what? I wish I had a prison cell for a bed tonight at the moment during the race, because at least it would be quiet and at least it would be comfy.
What you should do is tweet out about it.
Yeah, what I should do is tweet out about it, because it's so hard. It's so hard, Le Mans, it's just, isn't it a drag, Graham? Every minute of it. All the cars we have to put up with that we're tripping over, drivers we have to chat to, race we have to watch. We have to get up in the morning really early.
Could be worse, though.
Could be Lordy.
Could be working down a coal mine.
It could be.
Are we going to wrap this up, gentlemen? One last word. A few last words from you, Stephen?
Just Happy New Year, everybody. What an amazing year. It has been the golden era that we're in at the moment. It's just amazing. And it's melting. The time is melting. And part of me just is trying my best at some of these events to really properly soak it in and not just get to the point where you're working so flat out and it's so hard and it's so hard that I don't actually appreciate that we'd have given literally anything 10, 15 years ago for this. So enjoy it, listeners, next year.
MP, last words of 2024. I had to remember what year it was from you before I wrap it up.
I'll maybe pivot that a little bit to look into next year. Going to definitely try and have more Stephen Kilbey on the show. I guess, Stephen, is now the time to tell him we're voting you off the island. Graham, we've decided,
I'm gone.
Time to put you out to pasture.
The budget's being cut that heavily.
A little too old to put you out to stud, but we're putting you out to pasture now. Going to try and...
If you could do that, I'll have a word with Trudy. We'll see how she feels about it.
Should we tell him, Stephen, that Trudy was involved in this decision? All right, we'll leave that alone. Going to try and have more Stephen involved next year and beyond for sure. So, and if I'm unable to make it for whatever reason, knowing that I'll be covering multiple forms of motor racing championships with travel and yada, 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 definitely appreciate the two of you taking care of the show when I've been unable. I'm sure it'll happen more next year, but looking forward to having more Stephen. Looking forward to having, hopefully, the two of you over here more often for IMSA races. Don't know if I will be getting over for any of yours, but look forward to hopefully seeing more of your faces. Going to do a more concerted effort this coming year through words, videos, whatever it might be. Continue showing you more about the sport that we love. Try and do more that just passion and love based, right? There's so much that we do, we get to see, we have access to. Very few others do. Why not use that access to just do things to show folks more? Bring them inside a little farther. Show things that we might take for granted or might just be so normal for us that we sometimes forget. Oh, no, show that thing. Share it, explore, even if it's just recording a dumb little 30-second something with our phones and sharing it. So just going to try and dial that up a little bit more. And do look forward to what the new year might hold for us and all that we do and the years after that. Graham, before we indeed say farewell to 2024, let's not forget our friends north of my border. that being our friends in good old Canada. Tell us a little bit about what folks might find this week in the newest posting related to the Sports Car Championship Canada on dailysportscar.com.
Well, I mean, we've got RJ O'Connell on this beat for us, and RJ's been talking to the guys at SCCC and indeed to some of the stars of today and tomorrow they're producing in Canada. And the latest feature on their alumni covers young Zachary Vanier. What we've got from RJ, he says, is this Canada's next sports car star? 2022 SCCC GT4 champion, and already making a name across the border and climbing up the ladder of sports car racing. That's a big part of what this is about. It is making a more sustainable national scene in sports car and endurance racing. But more than that, it's this mission they've got to provide a feeding tube, if you like, of talent that can cross the border southwards, and we hope across the pond as well. So Zach Venier's tale, a good one to read if you're a fan of finding out the paths that young talent can actually make into and through the sports. And that's part of the big stories that are coming out from our friends in Canada. It remains for me then to just say our farewells 2024 to Stephen Kilbey. Congratulations on a great year of work for DSC and Racer. Some breakthrough stuff from you, and an exciting year to come for you and Carolyn. Good luck with that. To you, MP, and to Chabral, my massive admiration for your continued goodwill through the struggles that lie through at the pair of you. I hope and pray and expect there will be much better times ahead.
I'll second that.
Yeah, from me and from my beloved Trudy and from the Husky, who you almost heard on the show when he was trying to drag the lawnmower through the door. But mercifully, you were spared that one.
We also lost a very good boy this year, so not forgetting about him.
No, we've not forgotten about him. Trust me, we've not forgotten about Oscar. And a big part of the fun behind this show, I think you will be hearing a bit more from the new boy Taz as things move forward. He's entering a new era of relative self-control. So hopefully we'll have him in the office a bit more in 2025. For me, though, thanks for all the support from everybody for everything we all do in 2024. I hope and I expect, with what we know we've got coming in 2025, the audience will only go north from here. We will be producing shows leading up to and through Daytona, but all three of us will be together at Daytona. That might well be the first opportunity for the three of us to get together in one room for a podcast or two during Rolex 24 Raw and race weeks. For now, though, with thanks, as always, to our sponsors at Pfaff Technologies, at the Justice Brothers and Toronto Motorsports.com, and of course to our friends at FEL Motorsports in Canada. It is pretty remarkable, isn't it, MP, that we started these podcasts those years ago talking about the Canadian race fans being savaged by bears, and now what we've got is savage motorsport on the tracks of Canada, with thanks to FEL Motorsports. I've been Graham Goodwin. Stephen Kilbey has been stayed alongside me, and our pal, our good friend Marshall Pruett across the pond in North America. This has been the Week in Sports Cars for 2024, part of the Marshall Pruett podcast collection, and we will speak to you next year.